Welcome to Fated, a podcast brought to you by Magella and Carlie, two romantasy-obsessed readers who believe that great books must include declarations of undying love and deep thrusts of desire. Diving into the spicy, smutty fantasy genre, we are here for both the rattling of stars and headboards, and our podcast starts with the worlds of SJM, but delves into other realms. Did we mention that washboard abs and wands of all kinds are welcome in this inclusive and magically charged space? No topic is off limits, and no one is forced to have only one favourite heroine. Welcome to Fated, where we are unabashedly and wholeheartedly hot and heavy for spicy fantasy fiction. It's time to sit down and smut up. Warning, spoilers ahead.
Rolling.
Hi, welcome to Fated, the podcast. My name's Magella.
And I'm Carlie. Welcome to this episode.
And we are going to talk about your TBR list. And if you are new to acronyms and abbreviations, TBR means to be read. And it is, for some people, a very, very long list of books that can become overwhelming and intimidating. And for other people, it is a source of excitement and anticipation. So we thought we would dive into this episode and discuss if Carlie and I approach our TBR list the same, or if we feel differently about the mountain of books that lies in our future. So, Carlie, do you want to start? Oh, wait. Firstly, tell me, what are you reading? What's going on? What have you got in your hands?
Oh my gosh. I've got Crown of Midnight, the third book in the Throne of Glass series by J Maas. So I am so close. I thought I would have it done by this episode. But life has thrown a couple of curveballs this week. So I am going to get that one finished tonight. I'm actually really enjoying it. So that's what's in my hands at the moment. What about you? What are you reading?
Look, I feel like this is a weird thing to say, but I am having a bit of a book and character hangover, and yeah. I'm flitting between books because I can't quite settle on the new book. And so I have actually gone back and have reread sections. So I have reread Throne of Glass a little because we're going to be talking about it. And also I'm rereading the Blood and Ash for Jennifer L. Armentrout because I read that very quickly because I'd waited 9 months for it. So I kind of inhaled it. And so I've gone back to do a slightly slower read, though really flicking over the first half. No spoilers there, but just there's much more spicy scenes happening in the second half. So obviously that's where I've gravitated to. But yeah, I'm finding myself in this little this space between books, and which I think is great that we're talking about the TBR list actually, because I have this TBR list and I'm not sure what to pick from it. So I want to talk about that, but I want to hear about you first. What do you think about the TBR list? Do you have one? Do you add to it constantly? Do you enjoy having a TBR list?
Do I enjoy having one? Part of me says yes and part of me says no. I definitely have one, and I was just thinking about where I even house that, like, because I've seen some people have like physical written down lists. Some people have it on their Goodreads app. Some people have it in their Amazon like wish list categories, like quite creative. But some people house it in places that I would never think to. I have it in my notes app on my phone and a little bit in my Goodreads and a little bit in my Amazon. So that probably tells you the kind of chaotic energy I have around my TBR. I never knew it was called, like there was a name for it until BookTok educated me on TBR. I didn't know it was really a thing. But yeah, I live in two worlds with it. So sometimes I love it because it makes me feel really organized and like I'm not going to miss out and forget a book that has been recommended to me or that I've seen has, gone viral on BookTok. Kind of brings me a sense of calm to note it down somewhere. Even though my brain says, you're not getting to that book until 2028, like, do you really need to note it down? It brings me a sense of calm to know that it's there. I know it sounds somewhat ridiculous, but it does. And the other part of me, it brings up my anxiety because I'm like, I'm not going to get to that till 2028. And so we
Until
want
2028.
to this conversation, or until my children move out of home, which is another potentially 20 years, with the current living cost crisis that we're in. So we wanted to talk about that, right? Because it does, I see, bring up quite a lot of overwhelm for a lot of people. And yes, that's how I feel about that. How do you feel about your TBR? Does it bring you a sense of calm or overwhelm, or both, like me?
Well, again, I didn't know that it was an official thing until, I arrived on BookTok and learnt all of the things. I don't even have an official TBR. Mine is a collection of videos in my TikTok saved videos. Like, it's a collection called Books to Read.
Oh, that's clever.
So in terms of order, though, there is none, because, often in these videos, people won't just talk about a single book. They'll talk about, the 5 best books that they've loved this year, or, the 10 books that changed the way they looked at the world, or something. So it's not very easy to access. But again, I do think it gives me, similar to what you were saying, the sense of, I'm not going to forget that that's the book that I want to read, or that's, I'm not going to have that book lost in the chaos of, collecting the next novels. But it is an interesting thing, I guess, to have, because I do feel like it sort of, the bigger it becomes, which it is constantly growing, the more it can take on this a type of pressure. Almost like it becomes a to-do list of books, as opposed, to be read sounds like something that has to be done anyway. But I feel like generally I look at it with anticipation and excitement. Like, this is great. I don't have to think about the books I want to read next because I've collected them ready to go. But occasionally, I think it depends on generally how overwhelmed I feel by life. But, that adds to it then. And I think, ooh, there's a lot of books there, like, what if I miss out? What if I don't read it in time?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many nuances, which I know we're going to discuss, about missing out and, spoilers and, not being in that wave of, so if you're not in the fourth wing and iron flame wave currently, I don't think you're not experiencing what many of us as readers are experiencing, which is this intense manic hype of everyone discussing theories and spoilers and talking about their favorite lines and making funny memes about the way that, Violet and Xaden talk in their heads and no one can hear them. Like, there's this really funny meme where, people are not saying anything, and people are like, this is what it looks like when Xaden and Violet are having a very aggressive fight or something, and they're just sitting there looking like nothing's happening.
You want to be in on the in-jokes, right?
You want to be part of it.
You're like, oh, gotta get to that book so I know what this community is talking about and why everyone's laughing at this and sharing it. And so this really also was highlighted to me in the last sort of couple of days. I put up this random little very short TikTok up about how, like this theme that I'm seeing is everyone's at this stage, because Iron Flame's only just been released. Magella read it in 2 days. It's sitting on my bedside table gathering dust. But I just put up, like, anyone else feeling like they want to read Iron Flame, but they have 5 or 6 or 7 other, Sarah J Maas books or other fantasy romance books they want to get to. And it went bananas. But what actually was really intriguing to me was the comments. It was people saying, yes, this is me. I feel so overwhelmed. I feel like I'm missing out. I just need to hurry up. And what really kind of broke my heart a little bit, because I am that kind of traditional purist of, like, enjoy your books, take the time, be present, don't churn, is so many people saying, I'm just going to hurry through Throne of Glass series. I'm just going to like really smash through and pump through Crescent City so I can get to it. I'm going to put down Kingdom of Ash that I'm halfway through, which I don't know how people can do that, and go across to another series, like another character, like another world, different characters. And I just felt like I needed to go in and give all those people a big hug and say, breathe. It's all good. Make sure this is still enjoyable for you, and can we just release the to-do list, the pressure, the churn and burn of these incredible books that I'm sure the authors wrote with the intention of people not burning through them, but just to, enjoy them and be in the moment with the characters. So that was so highlighted to me. If you, go across to my TikTok, which will be linked in the show notes, just have a look at that theme. I'm sure you've seen it too, Magella, of like hundreds of comments, people saying, yes, that's me. I feel so pressured. And I don't want people to feel that way. So yeah, intimidation, overwhelm, fear of missing out, they're kind of the themes we're seeing.
Yes. And I think that it does, it is something to be mindful of, that you want to read how you want to read. I was just saying to Carlie earlier before we started recording, we were kind of discussing what we thought about TBRs, and I was like, yeah, I can see how it can have this influence, and I can feel like a pressure. But for most of the time, for me, I don't think about my TBR list. I'm literally thinking about the one next book, and the one that's really pulling me forward the strongest. And sometimes that's because of hype. Like, it was very hard to not want to read Iron Flame straight away because there was so much talk about it. And I had read Fourth Wing recently. And so there's this collective excitement, which is very appealing and alluring, and you want to jump in on that. But at the same time, I usually go for a book will just pull me in. There'll be something about the plot, the character, even a recommendation where 10 other people could have recommended this book, but then I'll come across one person who, the way they describe it, or just the earnestness of how much they love it or something, or they'll talk about the plot in a way that really like hooks me in. I'll be like, ooh, like I want to read that. So my TBR list mostly stays kind of as like, I don't refer to it very often. I definitely don't have anything printed out or written out. I don't tick things off or cross them out when they're done. It's more almost like if there's a void. So I guess currently right now I'm not really drawn to a book. So I want to be drawn to a book. Like, I want to read certain series and be like, I know that this sounds really good, but nothing has like grabbed me. Yeah. And so that's why I'm kind of rereading bits of old books. But this might be when I go back to my TBR list and just look at some of those videos and see if something grabs me. It would be I'm using it as a resource as opposed to something that feels like if I don't do it, I'm not achieving or I'm not being productive. There's no sense of churn and burn when I read. It's more just I can't pace myself. Like, there's not a churning to get so that I can tick it off and be like, done. It's more like, holy hell, like I need to get it all into my brain straight away so that I can then process it through my body and I can feel the feelings. Like, it's almost like if it's drawn out, I'm in this constant state of being suspended between knowing the outcomes and and I mean, that's obviously how even TV used to work so well with sitcoms, like, or shows that were just released once a week, or you'd watch them and you'd have to have this sort of drip feed of, oh my god, what's going to happen next week. And the same with radio shows. So I definitely understand that there is this beautiful anticipation that happens when you can't have everything all at once and devour it whole. But I currently don't have the off switch with reading to be able to self-pace. So you
We know,
know,
we know.
there's that.
You are
But I think
instant
it's
gratification.
that's right.
Whereas
But I
I
think, you
love
know,
to
on your TikTok thing, yes,
draw it out.
people
And it
love
is,
this. Like people like will stop and they wait and they don't read those last 100 pages. And that I just feel like that is like, it feels like death. It feels like I'm just watching them tell me about it or explain to me. I'm hurting for them. My soul is
oh,
hurting
we're okay.
for them.
We're okay. I love it. I love it. That's, you know, the difference between you and me. We can just bounce off each other in that way. But it's really interesting what you said about TV shows. You know, Magella and I, we are children of like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. So, you know, that we did have to wait a week for our next installment of Friends or Party of Five, which I loved when I was in my early teens. Like we had to
Such a
wait.
great show.
Whereas now we binge. We're able to binge and access things. And, you know, yes, we still sometimes have to wait for series to come out, or a series will drop 4 episodes and we binge them and then we have to wait. Yes, there's still a little bit of waiting, but there is much more the ability now to binge. And I wonder if now that's, moving across into the book world. But I was also thinking I was having a conversation with my sister on the weekend about reading, and she actually gets most of her books from the library. And I'm really inspired to do this again because the budget, you know, that's a whole other conversation about what I'm spending on books. Because I do really like to have the paperbacks of the books I love. But she's like, no, I go to the library. But then she was saying, you know, I have to get it back. So there's a deadline still. There's pressure to get it back and return it. Or they've got this new thing at the library with some really popular new releases. You only get it for like 2 weeks instead of 4. It's called a quick read. So she's like, oh, so I can't, I've got it on my list and I'm the 30th in line reserved, but I need to be ready to read it when it's available. And I was like, this is just another form of like a TBR, your reservations at the library. And that's what I said to her, oh, that's probably just why I buy them, because I've got them. I know they're there. And when I'm ready, I can go and grab it. Or on my Kindle, you know, I download a lot of them when they're free or they're $2 or whatever. I don't think I've ever bought a full price book on my Kindle Unlimited, but on my Kindle. So yeah, that was just another little aspect I was thinking about. Like there's even pressure when you go to the library and you borrow books and deadlines and that kind of thing there. So I just thought I'd share that as
Yeah,
an
it's
interesting little thing
interesting.
too.
Yes, because I would never think about going to the library, mostly because I'm a rereader, like, and that could be why I read so fast, is this knowing that I will reread it again, and not in 2 years' time, but in a month, you know. So
Yeah.
there's this, if
Whereas
I
I
was
never,
borrowing books,
I
yeah,
rarely
it's so
reread.
interesting. Like
Yeah.
I feel like I have almost reread everything that I own. Like I don't know if
Amazing.
unless I don't like it enough, and that if I don't like it enough, I don't know if I would finish it, which is another conversation we'll have, which is the did not finish conversation
Yeah.
for another episode, which
Yeah.
is a very, very topical and inflammatory discussion, because people are hardcore about finishing, and other people are like, I cannot give up my precious time for a book that is not taking me. And where do you decide? Like, is it 3 chapters in, 6 chapters in? Like, what if you're 3/4? Do you just go like, sorry,
Let's
I'm
save
out?
that
Like,
That's a whole. We have to have that conversation because I've definitely shifted over the years, and I'm okay now with DNFing, but I wasn't when I had copious amounts of time on my hands. So, okay, so our experiences with our TBR. The other thing I wanted to pull out was you said something really cool about. That's right. So you say yours is there as a resource, and when you've got a lull or you've got the opportunity to, you'll go in there and see what sort of calls to you. And it's interesting because
calls to
I'm actually
me.
the same.
Yes.
I'm very structured with like I go into Goodreads. I use Goodreads. Call me old fashioned, or apparently the young ones now say Goodreads is crap. But anyway, I use Goodreads, and I add it to my Goodreads, and I feel, but I don't. It is still a resource. So I still find myself reaching for books before this podcast started anyway, that I'm just drawn to, that feel exciting to me and that I want to read in the moment. So whilst I'm a little bit more structured potentially, and I know that it's there and I feel calm that I've got them all listed down in my want to read shelf. I still don't really kind of, use it as a tick off kind of thing. So I just wanted to clarify that like the podcast has been a little bit different, right? I do want to get through Throne of Glass. I've had that since Christmas last year. My son bought it for me. He doesn't know what it's about. Obviously, he's 9. He just keeps reading. Have you read those books I bought you, Mum? And I kept saying no. Now we've got the podcast. That I want to get some stuff read to talk to our audience and talk to Magella, obviously. But yeah, I just wanted to make that point that I don't see it as a tick off kind of thing. I still go in and I'm selective about what to read and when. So yeah.
I think the whole point is that with anything, I think we always circle back to what we would love is that people make it their own, make reading their own beautiful oasis, from the world, that if the TBR list works for them and makes them feel excited and alive and filled with, kind of tingling anticipation, then, have at it, print it out, bedazzle it, make it part of your, daily vision boarding, this will be the next book that I read. It's going to be, but if it ends up making you feel anxious or overwhelmed, or that you're falling behind, or that you can't keep up, or that people are better readers than you, or people are smarter than you, or whatever, like if it's triggering a negative cascade, that's when I think we would both be saying, ditch that list. The list is not working for you. The everything comes back to the joy of reading, the joy that it brings you, the escapism, the comfort, the inspiration. So I think that's my take on the TBR, is that, I've adapted it to be, a collection of videos that I read when I'm seeking something, but it is not anything that I use or refer to very often, because I do think I would very quickly tip over into that. Once I started to tick off things, I love a good tick. And so then it would become a tick project. So it just has no appeal for me in that way. Yours sounds similar, that it's...
Yeah. And it's interesting because sometimes I go back and look at it, like very occasionally I'll go back and look at it and I'll be like, oh, I don't have any energy around that book anymore. Because in the moment there was something, I was in a space where I was like, that I want to add that and I want to read that in the future. There's been a few that, when I go back, I'm like, no, actually. So if I used it as a tick off, then I think I'd be reading a lot of stuff that I didn't really want to read or I wasn't really into. Another element though that I want to share, get your viewpoint on, Madge, is we do live in this world of like online, and we've talked about the community being very, very enthusiastic and obsessed and wanting to share. So we have spoilers, and how does that add to the pressure when you maybe are really comfortable with the order you're reading things in and what's coming next and the pace, but you go on to have a little scrolly scroll and you're like, oh gosh, I need to now avoid BookTok for the next little while this wave comes through. Right now it's Iron Flame. How I'm really curious about the element of that, because I can tell you that in my comment section on my TikTok yesterday and last night, I kept saying to people, like, it'll be there. It's not going away. Like, if you can't get to Iron Flame right now, it's not disappearing. It's not like in 2 months' time, Rebecca Yarros is going to say, take all of the books off the shelf. So just breathe. But a lot of them said, but I'm going to see the spoilers and I just don't want to see the spoilers. And I've got my head down and I'm not actually on TikTok much because of the spoilers. That's a new phenomenon, really, isn't it? So that's something
definitely
that adds pressure.
And I think that is something that shouldn't be discounted as minor either. Like, I think that once you kind of enter this world where you start to become connected to characters, and especially characters in a series where authors love to leave us with a cliffhanger. So you've just kind of had this moment of like, oh my God, are they going to die? Are they going to end up here? What's just happening? Plot twist, that person's come back from the dead. This person's died. Like, have they died? That kind of thing. And so the idea that you could innocently just be scrolling and someone, or you were distracted and they said spoiler, but you didn't hear it, or something like that, or the sound hadn't clicked into your headphones, and suddenly there's this like, oh my God, this character didn't die. And suddenly you're like, oh, but
Yeah.
I wanted to read that myself. So I think it's not something that is necessarily a small thing anymore with the I guess the new look book club,
Yeah.
which is now booktok, instead of it being that kind of monthly in person or even remotely through COVID, people had those kind of book clubs that they would, sit down and all read together and discuss. Now it's like it is a permanent
Mm.
book club, and everyone has entered the meeting at different times. So you might walk in halfway through and they're deep in a plot discussion about a book that you haven't read, or you could have walked in at the beginning and you can steer the conversation. But I think that there is that it can actually cause, mental and emotional distress to have these. I do think it in a weird way. Well, not in a weird way. I do think social media potentially is doing more harm than good in this world. Like, I love that it's hyping people up to read, but I think that there are so many parts of it that are, forcing people to not be able to have the experience of reading that they want. Like, people want the connection and they want to talk about it and they want to be able to say, can you believe this happened? Or, oh my God, that line. Or, did your toes curl up at that moment? That
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. And
thing.
that's
But
what
I don't think we're signing up.
Keep going. Sorry. Keep going.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just don't think we're signing up to have this pleasure that we are enjoying of the reading, whatever that is. Like, it's not just because we're reading spicy books. It's like the pleasure of reading. We didn't sign up to have that turned into something that causes us anxiety and angst and distress and agitation and competitiveness and jealousy. And so I think that we have to somehow work out a way to like protect this beautiful pastime that we and so many other people enjoy. And it will be so interesting. I'd love to hear what our listeners do to kind of, I guess, protect their reading or their books, or if they don't and they're finding it really hard and they're being kind of tossed around by the waves of social media.
Yeah, and that's what really shocked me yesterday interacting with some of my community, was that I don't think most of them have any awareness of that and what that's doing to them, and the agency that they have to start to protect themselves. So, my therapist brain's like, it's on each of us. We have to, social media wants to feed that frenzy, right? So TikTok wants to feed that frenzy. Hence why that silly little video went stupidly viral. Like, are you feeding my audience this kind of energy? And that's why I was in. So the other thing I want to say is, Magella and I are really aware of this. And we know that even putting a podcast out, that there'll be times when maybe people listen and hear a spoiler, and we're going to try so hard to put it in the show notes and verbally say it when we are going to share things that we think will maybe influence people's reading experience. But again, at the end of the day, the listener, the reader, the consumer of the content has to be very aware and put up boundaries, practices, behaviors that will support their reading practice to be as nourishing and as enjoyable as possible. It's like I sit here a week after Iron Flame came out and I am gobsmacked that I haven't heard a spoiler yet, but I have been very vigilant. Any Iron Flame video is gone in a millisecond. I don't care what it's about. It's gone. But that takes a lot of awareness and intention in that as well. And it is, the old book club, like the retro book club, was you got a book, you had a month or so to read it, you knew you were catching up, but you could still opt out. I didn't get it read, so I'm not going to go. Or, there was, a little bit more awareness and maybe choice. Whereas, yes, get on socials, you're probably going to have some spoilers in your face if you're in the BookTok world.
Definitely. Yeah. And I do want to just add one little thought about something that you shared earlier, and it sparked something that I wanted to discuss, which I think might also need its own episode. But I was just curious. I would love to know you know how sometimes we've both been searching for the next book and we're waiting for it to call to us. And I'm wondering if that decision-making process, if you're not using your TBR list as a checklist, but you're literally kind of being like, okay, what book speaks to me now? What am I feeling drawn to? I wonder how much that is influenced by your hormones. Because a lot of the people
I
that
didn't expect you
we,
to say that.
talked well, because I'm thinking, like, if you're about to ovulate, you're going to be grabbing the smuttiest, spiciest books, right?
Yeah.
And if you're heading towards your period, wouldn't you be grabbing something that's comforting, that's something, or maybe even something that's gonna kind of help, like you're grabbing something that matches your slightly sadder mood, and at the beginning of your cycle, when you're feeling really like energized, are you going for things that have more fight scenes, and are you flicking past things? I feel like that would be such an interesting discussion,
Well,
from a
I
perspective
think we
of,
need to
like,
track that. I'm going to add that to my tracker. Let's look at my biometrics and my book reading and my menstrual cycle. Maybe we should track that for a few months because I haven't
I just think,
noticed it, but maybe that's because I'm not aware. And then let's come back.
yes, and we could ask people, like, and we could jump onto people's. I mean, it would be weird, but hopefully not inappropriate. But to jump on people's videos when they're super hyped about a particular, like when they're doing, like when they're talking about a spicy scene and they're just like, oh my god, or they're talking about Cassian and headboards, or they're talking about, like,
Yeah.
like corded muscles and that kind of thing. Can we ask them, like, did you make this video while you were ovulating, around your ovulation? Like, because surely when you're about to get your period, you're not thinking, yes, I want to jump on TikTok and rave about this sex scene. Or does that not?
I don't know. I'm
What I
going
mean?
to really pay attention now.
I don't know how many creators we can ask this of. So we need to make some more friends online that we can feel very comfortable to be like, hi, I just need to know when you put out that last viral video of yours. Now, were you in your luteal phase, or, I'd just love to know. I think that would be really
I'm going
interesting.
to add that to
Probably no one
your
else
job
cares.
list, and you can have those conversations. That would be really fun. Like Magella and I have visions in the future of creating spaces where we can, have more personal, intimate conversations about all of this stuff in our own potential kind of book clubby space. And yeah, they're the kind of conversations we could probably have in there, I think, as well.
And also, it could be also just even like self-care, to be like, don't grab that particular book if you know that it's going to be, if you're heading into a traumatic part of the book, or that it's a very intense plot line and you need something, go for the lighter romances, or go for something that,
Don't read Haunting
like, I
Adeline.
mean, if you're reading Kingdom of Ash,
Oh.
exactly, if you're reading books like that and you're on your period, I mean, like, it's going to be a lot. It's already a lot.
You can help me plot and time the Throne of Blood series with
We
my
need an
cycle.
app. We need an app that syncs our cycle and our book reading habits, so that we just refer to it and they say, this week you need to read, lighthearted witch romantasy, and next week pick up Kingdom of Ash again.
Surely
I
we can
think we need
integrate
some.
that with Apple Watches and different biometric
That's
trackers.
right. I think the booktok girlies would love it.
SKM should
Love it.
definitely trade. Yeah, look, you heard it here first. You heard it here first on Fate of the
right.
Podcast.
We have the IP, so if anyone wants to buy this idea of us, but I think we're out of time for this episode, because I feel like we need to discuss other things. But I think Carlie this week has a beautiful line from a book that she's going to share, and we're going to try and guess where it's from. Carlie, is that true?
We are. I've got one from one of my favorite series. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. He murmured, I give you my body. I give you my blood. I give you my soul. I give you my heart. From this night until the end of nights, from daybreak until our days are broken, your soul is my soul. Your heart is my heart. Your pain is my pain. I bind myself to you. I wanted it to all be a lie, but it was not a lie.
Wow, that is great. That definitely makes me want to read that book.
I'll tell you after the episode which book that's from. But yeah, we'd love to hear it. In the little question below, you can answer that or just let us know in one of the comments as well. Fun.
Perfect. Great. Well, we'll be back next time with another, probably going to break down another book this time.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to hear what you think about the episode below.
Awesome. See you, Majalla. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
All right. Stopping.
Thank you so much for listening. We hope that you felt like you were eavesdropping on a conversation that you have been dying to have with someone to discuss all the tiny details and possible plot twists of the books that you've recently read. Perhaps you don't have someone to chat to after you finish one of those epic books, so please give the show a follow and we would be honoured to be your book-obsessed friends. But mostly though, we hope it was fun, it gave you a giggle, it made you gasp or encouraged you to pick up a different author. Please share it with someone who you think would also love it. And drop us a review, letting us know what you loved and what you want to hear from us in the future. We will be back with another episode soon. Happy reading.